No, I don't need it. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. Good morning. Welcome to PhxStartupWeek. How we doing?
Great.
That's the cool stuff. Awesome. So, I know that we got lunch coming up after this, and if I do my job right, we're going to go ahead and give you plenty to talk about, not just at lunch, but after that. So, I usually give this presentation in about 30 to 45 minutes. They give me 20 minutes, so I'm going to go a little fast, but I will stay around and answer any questions that you might have. I'll stay until every single last one is answered, and let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and have some fun. So, real quickly, just to pre-qualify me, as far as why I'm here, the too long didn't read is I've been entrepreneurial my whole life. I started by selling candy on the bus in middle school, and then I actually worked at Infusionsoft for 5 years, now known as Keeps. Anybody use or heard of Infusionsoft before? A couple people? Awesome, not kinds of people. And then I now currently have an agency that specializes in automation and advertising. And so basically, at this point, I've worked with hundreds, if not probably over 1,000 different businesses and startups, and this is kind of a distillation of everything that I've learned from them. So hopefully that's enough of a reason to pay really good attention, and let's go ahead and dive right in. So, you're going to be learning about the business stack today, and this is the ultimate business model that can work for any startup. It can actually work for any business regardless of the size, whether you're a one-person hot dog vendor or Disney. The only difference is the scale, because this is a customer experience central model. It's all based on what the customer is going to go ahead and experience here. So I want to quickly pre-frame why we're even doing this training in the first place, because we are drowning in experts in specific parts of business. So there's all sorts of marketing experts that are great, however, they're not turning around and talking about the financial bits, or you'll have somebody that's like really, really good at HR, but they're never going to talk to you about sales. And so I was not able to find any kind of an all-encompassing, holistic business training. And at least if there is, it's not easily accessible. And so that is kind of where this got developed. And I've been testing this model personally in my own businesses and with my clients for close to 5 years. And it seems to be holding true. So you can feel confident that this will work for you, regardless of where you're at, if you're just starting out, or if you're established, or if you're even doing more than that and being super successful here. So let's go ahead and talk about the business stack. So as I mentioned, it's all about what the customer experience is, and so that's the entire context for this. It's how the customer receives your business through their lives. So we'll go ahead and start right at the top. The customer receives your offer. That's what they're getting. So your offer is simply your products and your services. And there's many different types of offers and things available. You can be serving B2B or B2C. You could be doing an actual product or a service. Maybe you do a hybrid. And it's really important to be aware of what is your offer. Like empirically, what are you even doing? Because there's a lot of different distinctions and things out there. So you can look at, I'm going to go turn around because that screen's a little tiny on me. So for example, price magnitude. Are we talking on the order of dollars, like a cup of coffee? Or are we talking hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars? That's really important to just be aware of what is your offer, because that determines all your different strategies. You know, the same thing that you can use to sell a cup of coffee isn't going to work to help you sell a $100,000 mortgage. There's also the distinction between if it is an assisted or an unassisted sale. So I'll talk about this more when we get to sales, but basically that just means, can somebody buy it on their own, or do they actually have to interact with the human to do it? There's other distinctions such as the fulfillment mode. So there's only 4 ways that any offer can be delivered, and sometimes it's a combination of them, but basically you have in-person live fulfillment. So like PhxStartupWeek is here, this is in-person fulfillment. There is voice-to-voice, so either a phone call, a Skype call, and those kinds of things. We have digital fulfillment, so it's purely online, and then physical fulfillment. So if you have a product, your physical delivery here. And then we look at the purchase recency as well. This is how often are people going to go ahead and buy this. If you are a coffee shop, you want to try and have people with a purchase recency, ideally, at least every couple of days, they're going to go ahead and buy a coffee from you. Whereas if you're selling something like a boat or a mortgage or a roof, that might be a once-in-a-lifetime kind of purchase, or at least maybe every 10 years or so. And so depending on how often people are going to buy, that's also going to determine a lot of what the customer experience is and how you can design that. And then we also have the really interesting distinction of, is it a functional offer or is it an entertainment-based offer? And it can sometimes be on the spectrum here. So there can be a lot of similar looking offers, but this is the main difference. What's the difference between this and a rock concert? There really isn't much. It's in-person fulfillment. The price is about the same as, a ticket to a show, but this is purely a functional thing. I might try and be a little bit entertaining so y'all don't pass out, but there's a difference between this is a functional offer or is it an entertainment-based offer. Now, as a startup, this is probably the most important thing for you to get down, because if you have, it's garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have a good, solid offer, it doesn't matter what you do to it. So you really want to focus as a startup on making sure that your offer is dialed in and tight. If you're doing software, make it the best dang software you can be. If you're a chef and you're making hamburgers in a food cart, make that the best dang hamburger anybody's ever tasted in their life. So you really want to make sure you're focusing on the offer, because this is what the customer experiences. And it's not on this slide, you do need to be aware of who your target is, because you're going to have multiple different targets as well. If McDonald's is selling hamburgers to kids and adults, they're going to go about it in completely different ways. So it's the same offer, but it might be a different customer journey. So this whole model is based on the context of what they receive. So the customer receives, your target audience, they receive the offer through the customer journey. And the customer journey has 3 parts. It starts off with marketing. And this is simply bringing awareness to what you offer in the first place. And in my opinion, the entire point of marketing is to simply take an anonymous person, turn them into a face with a name that you can continue the conversation with. There's many different kinds of marketing. There's really 2 main classes that are out there these days. You have the traditional offline marketing. So this is where you have your direct mail, flyers, that kind of stuff. You've got the radio and TV, and then of course you have word of mouth. And these, of course, this is just 3 examples. There's all sorts of offline marketing that's available. And then the other side of that is the online marketing. So this is where your website comes into play. That is absolutely part of the customer journey. Could be more than just the marketing, but it's definitely a marketing asset. This is where you look at your social activities. And when I say organic social activities, I mean the stuff that you can do for free on the platform as designed. So you can make posts, upload videos, comment, engage with people. That's what I mean when you talk about organic. And then you have the paid side as well. So you can do paid social, you can do paid PPC. There's even, if any of y'all are interested in doing billboards, there's a really cool company called Blip Billboards that I just tested out recently, and it's an on-demand digital billboard service. And so there's all sorts of ways that you can go ahead and market. But that's just the first part of the customer journey, because after that, marketing transitions into the sales journey. And the sales journey is where you take this face with the name and you transform it into, you transform the relationship into that of a paying customer. When somebody gives you money, that transforms the relationship. So that's the entire point of sales here. So if you're doing something that is an unassisted sale, this means that people can purchase on their own without interacting with a human. So this is super common with e-commerce and online-based companies. And this is also something you see with the physical bots out there, like a soda machine. There's no human in there chunking out a machine and taking your money. That's a completely unassisted sale right there. If you're looking at an assisted sale, this is where those offer distinctions start to come into play. So if it's an assisted sale and it's a low dollar price point, like a cup of coffee, something like that, usually the sale needs to be assisted as a function of the product or the service. So when you go to a restaurant, you kind of have to talk to a waitress or a waiter or a server to say, hey, here's what I want. Now, we're starting to see that change. You look at some of the big fast food chains like Taco Bell and McDonald's, they actually have kiosks where you can buy it unassisted. And that's relatively new. Same thing with like self-checkout at grocery stores and Walmarts and things like that. So when you're looking at a larger dollar, when you're looking at an assisted sale of something that's at least on the magnitude of hundreds or more, you're pretty much always going to want to have some kind of a pipeline tool to help you track the conversations and track people through the sale. So there's a lot of experts out there in sales, and we're driving in experts in all different parts of the business stack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give you an example of a pipeline. It's a classic startup pipeline that should be able to work in at least 80% of the cases or more if you're doing assisted sale or something with a high dollar value. So again, it doesn't matter if it's a software, or a service, or whatever. If it's a high price point and you got to have that human interaction to sell, you definitely want to have some kind of a pipeline to make sure people aren't slipping through the cracks. So everybody starts off as a new lead, and that literally means that the marketing has done its job and it's identified we need to invest human capital in reaching out and follow up with somebody. So the next thing is contacting. This means that we are contacting them. So this means it's just been a one-way outreach at this point. I'm making phone calls and voicemails and emails. I haven't heard anything back. I'm still contacting them. It's very similar to a new lead, and at the same time, it's very different. So when you're thinking about a pipeline, if it helps, think about a set of stairs where every single stair is a meaningful step in the sales process. And of course, you can skip stairs as well. You could go right from a new lead directly into engaging. This is where you actually call them and they pick up the phone, they're engaging with you. And the whole point of engaging is to find out if somebody is even qualified for what you offer. So there's a lot of theory on there about what it means to be qualified. In my experience, there's really only two things that mean somebody's qualified to move ahead in the sales process. We're assuming they have a problem and you can help solve it. That's kind of a gimme. Assuming that's the case, somebody is qualified if they have budget and if they have the authority to spend it. If somebody does not have the budget, it makes no sense in proceeding with the sales process because they can't buy it anyway. If they don't have the authority to spend it, it doesn't make any sense to move ahead in the sales process because even if they love it, they aren't allowed to spend that money. And so in those cases, especially if you're looking at larger deals, you need to make sure you're getting all the stakeholders that are involved in that sale at this point in the process. Because it doesn't make sense to move ahead at any point in time beyond this, because then you're just kind of wasting human labor and you're setting yourself up for a bunch of disappointment. So this is halfway through the sale. Because if somebody has budget and they're allowed to spend it, it's literally a flip of a coin. They can say yes or no. So, yes or no. After this point, usually things happen in pairs. So if you're a startup, usually you'll have a meeting scheduled and then the meeting is complete. And then after that, you will go ahead and send them a proposal and then the proposal is accepted. The whole point is to transform it into a transaction where there's actually money in the bank. So you haven't won yet, even though they've accepted the proposal, it's not until that deposit's been made, then you actually won a sale. Money's in the bank, and now we can move on to the next part of the customer journey, which is the fulfillment. This is where you actually deliver the goods on what they purchased. And so this is everything after the sale and beyond. So this is where your onboarding comes into play, or your contracts, or however your intake works. That's part of your fulfillment. This is where the magic happens. If it's a software, this is where they're actually using it and getting value out of it. If you're a restaurant, this is where they're actually eating the hamburger. If you're a lawn service, this is where you're actually mowing their lawn for them. And then you have the follow-up and the future work. And so once the main thing has been done, or even if it's something like a software where they're like reusing it and buying it once a month, as a subscription, this is where you want to make sure you're asking for testimonials, making sure you're asking for referrals. This is where you can do upselling and cross-selling and pretty much everything after that sale. So with this business stack model, this is for one offer. So obviously, well, not obvious, some companies have more than one offer. And it's totally reasonable for the deep fulfillment of product A to start the marketing journey from product B. There's not a distinct break in this journey, it's fluid. It's marketing and then sales and then fulfillment, and they just kind of transition into each other. And these modes might look really similar. If you're a restaurant, the marketing, sales, and fulfillment is pretty much 99% of the same. The only difference is, okay, I'm getting a salad instead of getting a burger. And that's still super important for the follow-up. So, now we're starting to get into the stuff that can be a huge blind spot for startups and even established businesses as well. So your customer receives the offer through the customer journey that's delivered by your operations. So this is like all of the stuff you don't see behind the curtain. If you're watching a play, that's the customer journey, and then backstage, there's a director and a makeup person, a light and a sound person. That is the operation. So if the customer journey is what the customer experience is, operations is how you actually do it. And this is really important to be mindful of and to really master how you do it, because this is how you're going to grow and scale. And every part of the customer journey has its own unique operations. When it comes to marketing, how are you acquiring your leads? Yes, what we want to do is acquire leads. Okay, how? Literally, how do you go out and find these leads? Are you buying a list and calling them? Are you running ads? Are you at live events and networking with people? How do you do your graphics? How do you do your video? Yeah, we need to make a video for this. Okay, operationally, how do you do that? And I'm sure you can have seen some head nods here that, yeah, this is where a lot of people can fall down. With operations, everything can be, and ultimately the goal should be, to be distilled down into a checklist to where it's repeatable. McDonald's is like that. They don't even have words when they're telling people to build sandwiches. It's literally just pictures. That's it. And that's how their operations ensure that it doesn't matter if I buy a burger here or if I go to Fiji, it's going to be the same product every single time. Same thing with Coca-Cola. You have a Coke here, or in the Middle East, it's going to be that exact same flavor that makes you feel at home. So how do you do that? Also, how do you do your organic social operations? Yeah, we want to post and comment and engage. How do you actually do that? What is your plan? How do you respond to people if they're upset? How do you acknowledge people when they're having a good time? So you have your sales operations, you have your pipeline operations. How do you actually work your sales leads? Yes, you're supposed to call them and follow up with them. How are you actually using the tool? How do you do your advertising? How do you do it in such a way that it's repeatable and scalable? How do you do your sales enablement? Okay, you guys, your salespeople are supposed to be putting out proposals. How? What are you giving them? Are you giving them an offer calculator so that way they can list out the things that they're supposed to, list out the things the customer wants so they can provide a quote? If you're doing proposals, do you have a template? And they're supposed to use that template, and then there's a checklist of how to fill in the template. This is where a lot of businesses can fall down. Now, when it comes to fulfillment operations, this is usually where I see the worst, because it's okay if your marketing operations are kind of weak, and like you can get by if your sales operations are kind of weak. But when it comes to fulfillment, that's what the rubber hits the road. If you're an agency and you're selling some $10,000 package, and then as soon as they buy and sign on the dotted line, it falls apart, your fulfillment operations are not on point, and that's not good. So this is where things like project management comes into play. How do you manage whatever you're supposed to deliver? And if you're cooking burgers in the back of the kitchen, how do you ensure that the order goes from the server to the chef to make sure that they're cooking everything? And then this is also where your follow-up processes happen as well. How do you ask for referrals? How do you ask for testimonials? How are you doing all of these things? So as I mentioned, the business stack is a holistic, all-encompassing way to look at business. This is where tools actually come into play. Now things like your calendar, your email, your project manager, your website, this is where they start to enter the conversation. These are all operational mechanisms. How do y'all manage your email? How do you manage your calendar? You would be shocked at how even large corporations they don't even train on this. Hey, here's an email address, and that's it. They don't set the people up for success. And then you have people that are missing things, they've got thousands of emails in their inbox, and they're getting all stressed out. That's no bueno. So tools show up in the operational layer. So continuing on with our conversation, your customer receives the offer through the customer journey that's delivered by the operations by your people. If you don't have people, you don't really have, you don't have a business, or it's just you. So people is who does the work. The customer journey is what they receive. Operations is how you do it. The people is who's doing it. So this is where you have tools like mission statements, core values, dream, vision, purpose, and mission, these kinds of things. These are all people tools to make sure that everybody's all on the same bus and they're all going to the same destination. People are your most important asset. Like I said, you don't have people, you don't have anything. You may have some like really sweet IP or something, but if you don't have people to administer it, you don't have anything. Now, you are actually your most important asset. if you're not operating at full capacity, there's no way you can expect to lead a team, there's no way that other people can expect to operate that. So you need to make sure that you're taking care not only of your physical wellness, but your mental wellness. Are you eating right? Are you getting sleep? If you meditate or are a spiritual person, do you do that? If you're not feeling good, you're not going to be able to do your job. So this is also where you have your internal staff. This is where you have your external contractors. This is where your vendors show up. This is where your partners show up. These are your people. This is also where your people leadership and management shows up. Like I said, this is an all-encompassing business model. This is where tools like one-on-ones, quarterly reviews, monthly team meetings, quarterly planning, annual planning, those are all people systems tools. And just like you have the customer journey, there's actually 3 journeys in a business. There's the customer journey, there's the hidden operational journey that most people don't really ever pay attention to, and then there's the people journey. How do you acquire new people? How do you inspire them to want to stick around and do the operations the best they can to provide the best customer journey? And when it's time for them to get off the bus, how do you fire them? You need to make sure that you're designing the internal people journey with just as much mindfulness as your customer journey. This is really what prevents people from scaling. Because if you can't consistently hire and onboard people and offboard people without them causing a whole bunch of problems in the business, you're going to be limited in your growth. And then the base of it all, the very last part of the business stack, finance. Money, because it makes the world go round. You're paying for your people, you're paying for your operational tools, you're paying to actually send the direct mail and do all your marketing, you're paying for the offer development, you're paying your engineers and the software tools for that. So this is super important, super critical. So this is where things like contracts and legal show up. This is where your entity structures show up. This is where you're making your staff payments. This is where you're making your contract and your vendor payments. This is where your habits are really, really important. Aristotle said that excellence is not a mistake, it is a habit. You are excellent because you do something habitually over and over repeatedly. So you're going to have habits in your offer development. You have your marketing habits, you have your sales, fulfillment, your operational habits, your people habits. Here's the thing. If those are a little off kilter, that's fine. No one's going to care. But if your financial habits are off, now other people are going to get involved. Now the state is going to come banging on your door saying, where's our tax money? Now the feds are going to be coming on and saying, where's your filing? So you can fall down on your habits inside the business all you want, but if you do it financially, that can actually literally crater a business, and that's really tragic. And you don't want to have that as a blind spot. So making sure that even something simple like the habit of making and taking deposits. If people are sending you checks, do you have a habit to check the mail, every Tuesday or Thursday, and then go to the bank? And then again, operationally, how do you do that? How do you ensure that they're getting the right card, putting in the right thing, and you're logging the payment in your CRM the correct way? This is where you want to be looking at the very least at your revenue versus your expenses. In the game of business, it's all about money in and money out. If you made more revenue than money went out, you won the game of business for that month. If more money went out than came in, well, guess what? The visiting team won. Better luck next month. And hopefully, if you keep losing month over month, then you're not going to have a business anymore. You're not going to have those funds. This is also a mention where your taxes and your fees come into play. You have to make sure that that's on point. So in the state of Arizona, so in Arizona and at the federal level, you make sure that monthly you're paying your federal payroll taxes, and as well at the state level, and then quarterly you're reporting on those. And then in Arizona, you're quarterly paying your unemployment taxes, annually at the federal level. And there's probably other fees and things like that depending on what your business is. So if you need the transaction and privilege tax, so to where you can actually charge people sales tax, I believe in Arizona that's an annual thing, and you still have to file quarterly. So this is the place where you really don't want to fall down on your habits. I'm not a financial guy at all, and I understood how important this was. I knew at least enough that I didn't know, I knew what I didn't know. And so I went out and I learned it because this is super important. And then that's where bookkeeping comes into place. You want to make sure you're keeping really, really good notes and really good tracking of everything, because if you ever get audited, worst case scenario, you want to be able to back up all the numbers that you're sharing. So with your bookkeeping, you also want to make sure that you're looking at your reporting. Especially if you're at the top of the food chain, you need to know your health of your business. And there's 3 financial statements that you need to be very aware of, and you want to look at least on a monthly basis. So you want to be looking at your balance sheet, which is what's the assets, the liabilities, what do we have versus what do we owe. And then you're going to look at your P&Ls, your profits and losses. You know, where did we have money come in? Where do we have the money go out? And then the third one would be a cash flow or an income statement of like literally where did the money come in from and where did it go out. By looking at this, you can get a really clear view on how the business is actually performing financially. And then of course, you probably want to have metrics and things that you're talking about for your people systems, for your operations, all that kind of stuff. So this is the business stack. The customer receives your offer through the customer journey. That is done by the operations of your people, and it's paid for with money. That's it. So now, when you're talking about your business and thinking about it, use this to center you and guide you, because usually these don't happen in a vacuum. You might be having a conversation about offer development and then a tool consideration comes into play. Well, now you're talking about operations and offers together. This can help you uncouple that. And if you're a one-person show, you're wearing all of these hats. So no wonder it seems overwhelming. So this, if you're having a marketing conversation, but then you get distracted with like some operational thing, you can now be mindful and say, well, you know what, that's important, and let's table that because we want to focus on the marketing piece here. So they have a couple of action items for you, and then I will take questions. I'm not sure how I'm doing on time. I'm a little bit over. Thank you so much, by the way.
You have until 11:40.
I was told I had 20 minutes, so that's awesome. Okay, so this is the last slide, by the way, so hopefully I'll have a lot of questions, otherwise we're going to break early for lunch. So the first thing you want to do is get very, very clear on your offer, what your price is, and who you're serving, if that's not clear. And so since I have a little more time, I'll share a story. A client recently, they have a software product and then they have a onboarding. People pay $1,000 for an onboarding, but sometimes they sell it for $500. And then sometimes they sell it for $250. And so my question was, oh cool, what's the difference? There isn't. It's just whatever they can get. They're just dropping down the price. And that doesn't necessarily work. If you're going to charge 3 different prices for an onboarding service, there better be 3 distinct parts of it. So I'm suggesting, hey, do the full onboarding, do the light onboarding, and then do the quick onboarding. And now you actually have a place to stand from your sales standpoint. And you can actually sell people on the value. If maybe they only have $500, you can actually sell them on ponying up $1,000 to get started. So get really clear about what your offer is, what your prices are, and then who you're targeting. And when you're starting out, you probably just want to focus on 1 target, maybe 2, depending on what you're doing. Most likely, the reality is you've probably got a couple of different target avatars out there. That's the first thing you absolutely want to get clear on if that's not already clear. Or it's a good time to revisit. Next thing that you want to do is go ahead and examine or create your customer journey. See how it is. And don't forget about that hidden operational journey. Maybe the customer journey is fantastic, but under the hood, everybody's complaining and the employees aren't happy. Fix that. If there's a tool issue, go ahead and fix that. The customer's not going to know about it, but your people do. And happy employees make happy customers, and that's what makes happy stockholders. So go look at your customer journey and see where you can patch things up, make it more delightful for whoever is the customer, whether it's the external customer receiving your offer or the internal customer, aka your employees and contractors that the business is serving. And the third thing that you're going to want to go ahead and do is do an audit of all your company functions across the business stack. So look and see, okay, based on our business, what functions do we need for the offer development? What marketing functions need to use this? All sorts of stuff like that. A really common mistake with startups is to build it around the people, which is the exact opposite of how you want to do it. You don't want to build a business around the people. You want to build a business around the functions and then place the people. And so if you do an audit of your functions and you notice that there's some gaps, go ahead and fill them. Either have somebody else step into that role or go hire somebody. Because a business is like a garden. And you have to water all of your plants, otherwise it's not going to work out. If all you're doing is focusing on like offer development, marketing, and sales, but you totally ignore fulfillment and you don't really care about finances as long as there's money in the bank, that's not sustainable. That's not going to work. Go ahead and find somebody that can go and handle those responsibilities if you're not willing to do it or there's not somebody on the team qualified to do it. So those are your action items. That's some takeaways from here. And now,